Hello, everyone. This is the Ubuntu Community Q&A. Today I'm joined by Mike Hall and a rare
Hello.
guest, hard to get, Thomas Voss. How
Sorry
you
to
doing?
You guys work hard to get me here.
Yes, we've been trying to get Thomas on for a while now, so we're super excited he's on. All of these questions you've been saving up for weeks for him, time to start getting them in.
All the hard ones. Brilliant.
Exactly. It's probably a good point in time to mention this is so I'm considering this like ask me anything. I haven't prepared anything in particular, so but even if Michael or Daniel, if you've got specific questions, just feel free to ask, and I will try to answer as good as I can.
Cool. All right, before we start, if you're new to this, if you're watching this on ubuntuonair.com, there's the chat widget below the video feed. Just enter your favorite nickname, hit the connect button, and then you can talk to us. Or you just use regular bold plain IRC, just point it to Ubuntu-on-air on Freenode, and make sure you prefix your questions with question in all caps so we can more easily pick all the questions up. And while you're at it, just make sure you subscribe to all the different Ubuntu on Air feeds so you get informed of new shows, old shows, all the stuff that's coming up. And I think that's it.
All right, do we have any announcements to talk about?
I don't know. I just came back from holidays. I'm still somewhat behind on emails and general stuff. So
But Daniel would be interested as well in any news.
Well, this better not come as a surprise to Daniel, but CuteCon and Anarchy are coming up, and he's going to be there to talk about snaps and snapping KDE and Qt applications.
yeah, I'm still going to blog about that. Mention all the details to you, but in any case, there's going to be a workshop about Snapcraft, so that's coming very soon. We should probably also mention UbuCon Europe. I think it's the last few minutes to get talks in. If I'm not.
Yeah, I think there's still the schedule's not finalized yet. There's still a few slots. So if you want to talk at UbuCon, which is November 17th through the 20th, I believe, or 18th through the 20th. It's that weekend in November.
Yeah, and that was a brilliant time to twist Thomas' arm to also show up there because it's just around the corner. It's in Essen. So
Yeah.
I hope if there's no sprint or anything else crazy, that we're going to have you there as well.
Yeah, I'm actually aware of the date, and it's in my calendar, so you guys can expect me to pop in. I'm not sure that I will present something, but I will certainly be around.
Sounds good.
All right, well, we don't have any other announcements. So Thomas, can you introduce yourself? Tell us where you're from and what you do at Canonical.
Yeah, sure, happy to. So yeah, my name is Thomas Foss. I'm from Germany, and as Daniel just disclosed, I live very close to Essen, which is in North Rhine-Westphalia, so western part of Germany. At Canonical, so I guess my official title is technical architect. That pretty much means working together with a lot of teams or with a lot of engineers and make sure that whatever we do is aligned in terms of we want to reach a certain set of goals, and whatever we do, whatever work we do, caters towards those goals. On a day-to-day basis, what does that actually mean? So obviously, I'm talking to a lot of people during my day, so either IRC or Hangouts. I actually prefer Hangouts. And then writing up whatever we came up with in terms of a rough spec. But please don't consider, when I say spec, that's not like 200 pages of document, that's more like a living thing. So usually a Google Doc so it usually starts out with a few meeting notes, and then people add comments, and you add a bit of flash to the individual key aspects that have been identified. And after some time, when people, so engineers, product management, and myself, we are happy with the document, we hand it over for implementation, or at least for getting it scheduled for implementation. And then I'm obviously coding, actually quite a lot during my day, and I do a lot of code reviews. So in particular, what I'm doing, or what I've been doing for the last month and years was I was very involved with the phone, and I still am. Although I'm kind of looking into Snappy now as well, for obvious reasons. Does that answer the question? Are there any specific questions on IRC that people want me to answer?
There are a few that I've seen that are going to be for you when we get to them, yeah. And if anyone has any other questions at all for Thomas, get them in early. Don't wait until the last minute. As always, we tend to run right up to the end of the hour, and if you don't get your questions in early on, we might not have time to answer them all.
Right. So I already see some interesting questions on IRC. I think people are quite curious about updates for the messaging framework. I can probably elaborate a bit on that.
Yeah.
Within bounds, let's put it that way. But let me first of all introduce the idea of the messaging framework for all the people out there that don't know it. So the messaging framework is pretty much an idea to the messaging framework bundles together multiple messaging providers. So when I say messaging provider, I'm referring to, for example, WhatsApp, or in the good old days when I was young, ICQ, for example, or IRC could even be a messaging provider as well, or a messaging service. Telegram, obviously, Gitter, whatever you can think of. And all of these messaging providers and backends feed into a central infrastructure. And the idea, that's what we call the messaging framework. And why do we do that? So the ultimate goal is to provide a very consistent user experience. So you would basically just use the Ubuntu messaging app for all of your messaging needs. And it doesn't matter if you're reaching out to a specific contact via, for example, WhatsApp or Telegram. It's just, you're just sending a message. So it takes away a lot of the burden that in terms of you don't have to maintain multiple, or you don't have to use multiple apps to reach out to people, and the user experience, it's about muscle memory to a certain degree. So you always use the same UI, the same workflow through the UI. You don't have to adapt to different applications and their specific UX. So that's the user-facing aspect. From our perspective, it's quite interesting in that we really would like to deeply integrate those messaging providers into the system in a secure way. So, and when I say secure, there are certain aspects that have to be considered. So Ubuntu as a platform, we try to make sure that the user stays in control of what can be shared with, or what is shared with on the one hand services and apps. And we can only guarantee that level if we pretty much pull that functionality, so that messaging functionality, deep into the platform. The other aspect is obviously lifecycle, for a very simple reason. Our lifecycle is strict in terms of apps. However, we are happy to open it up for anything where we think, hey, that's reasonable. It's obviously reasonable to have Telegram being able to check for messages once in a while. So Telegram is actually a bad example because they integrate with our push infrastructure. But take IRC, for example. So let's assume you had a messaging framework IRC backend. And that's perfect. It's perfectly reasonable that backend is capable or is allowed to stay alive to keep a connection open. And that brings me to the incentive for the developer, right? Why would they do it? Why would they integrate with our messaging framework? Well, yeah, they get, to a certain degree, they get elevated privileges in the system. And when I say elevated privileges, we are not breaking confinement at all. So things are still confined, but we still offer more functionality to them. So in terms of status, which was the actual question, the messaging framework, as far as I remember, and the source code is actually available on Launchpad today. I can look up the link after I finished my quick answer here. It sits on top of telepathy, and it provides a simpler API around telepathy. So telepathy is a beast, right? And integrating with it is not necessarily easy. So we wrote this layer on top that people can just use and implement a few interfaces in C++, and that gives them a messaging provider. We have done that exercise ourselves for RCS, and for those, and we announced that at MWC this year. So RCS is Rich Communication Services. It's like the next generation of SMS and MMS. It's closer to what Telegram and WhatsApp do, but mostly driven by operators out there. And we integrated that into the messaging framework. So again, the code is there, and all of that stuff is running today on the phone. The one interesting aspect is, how do you get a messaging provider? So you could write a messaging framework plugin today. The question is, how do you get it on the phone? And that's where we still got work to do. So we have to figure out how we distribute those messaging provider plugins, either via the store or, so I'm not even sure we want to do that. That's still under discussion. Or if it's an option at image build time. That's kind of the place we are in today. I hope that answers the question.
So it sounds very similar to things we already have in Empathy and Pigeon.
Well, yeah, sure.
Can you explain the differences between those and what we created for this, and why?
Well, Empathy actually telepathy is probably the most common one, right? And a lot of people sit on top of it. However, whatever sits on top is usually very app specific. What we did, and then to a certain degree, even desktop environment specific and toolkit specific. And we wanted to get rid of that, right? And we are obviously not reinventing the wheel, because telepathy has all the functionality we need. It's just a question of how easy is it to write a telepathy plugin today? And the answer is not so easy, unless you use something, you go into telepathy, or you use Empathy, or what was it, Purple, I think. There was a thing as well.
Yeah.
But then all of these things are very app specific. However, even our own message, so whenever you write the plugin to our own messaging framework, you're not gearing it towards our own messaging app at all. So those two things are entirely decoupled, right? So pretty much anyone out there could use the messaging framework and actually could use it today to plug it into their applications if they wanted to. So it's readily available. I think the difference there is that this middle layer we came up with really serves two purposes. On the one hand, it shields the developer. So we give them a simple C++ API, and I'm not saying that everyone should love C++, but it's just the same choice for this problem domain, right? And they just implement towards this API, and they don't have to worry about the middleware that we are using. So while telepathy is a very sane choice today, that might or might not change in the future, right? And we don't want application or backend developers to keep track of that. We give them some sense of stability and let's say it's convenience that we offer in that respect. And then from our perspective, the same argument applies, right? Telepathy is the best choice we can take today, fine. But for us, it's always it's a little easier to take a step away from the middleware and say, hey, this is the functional interface we want people to implement. So same argument applies. We shield away from changes in the middleware, and on the other hand, we have things immediately testable, right? So we've got a very simple set of interfaces. Even if not so simple, we can take a plugin for that, and we can instantiate it in a testing environment without the need for all of telepathy and all of the desktop environment and whatnot. We just take that, put it into our CI, and put it to the test and run it. And actually, we've got hundreds of tests running against RCS today. So sending actual messages from A to B on test accounts, and for every commit. And in that respect, it makes things a lot easier and more predictable, if you want so.
All right. We've got a follow-up question from Chloe Wolfie Girl. She's asking, does Canonical plan to support some messaging platforms like Telegram or XMPP? Or will Canonical just create the framework and only support SMS or, I suppose, RCS?
Well, I think that depends on the actual messaging platform. I think Telegram would we are not supporting it today, but it would certainly be something that that would be of interest to us. XMPP to a certain degree, and then I guess the question is, it depends on the individual messaging provider. I think I cannot commit to that, but I think Telegram, I would assume that's something that we will do. We obviously do SMS and MMS, as was mentioned on IRC, and then we did the implementation for RCS. One of the more interesting, so if someone felt like, hey, I want to work with that, one of the more interesting things would be either Gitter and or IRC Cloud. So IRC Cloud offers a REST API, and that would actually be quite interesting to have that as backends. So I'm on my desktop right now, and I've got like what feels like 50 notifications popping up from different apps and status indicators in my status bar, just to keep track of my messaging, and that's like, man, I don't want that. I want a central place for that.
As long as we press enter to send on the messaging app, I'll be happy. I've gotten so used to that on our Telegram app that whenever I'm doing just regular messaging, it frustrates me. So,
yeah.
In terms of like feature support, like Telegram's got groups. They all have different ways of showing like buddy lists or people in a channel or something like that. What's the base level kind of features that the new framework will support?
That's a very good question, and I think first the answer evolves over time. So, but right now the base level support that we have in place is we have sticker support. We actually have how do you call that? This push to talk. So you record an audio message and send it out via the messaging provider. We've got group chat support. We've got so I think for RCS they've got burn after read as well. We don't support the fanciest features of every single messaging provider. We are focusing on the features that are, from our perspective, and we are happy for input, we are focusing on the features that provide the most value to users. And as we are quite focused on security and privacy, so stuff like secret chats, end-to-end encrypted chats, burn after read, those are interesting. So for that we support them. Then we've got group chats, which are, from my perspective, should just be there. And so stickers are quite fun. I have to admit I'm not a heavy user, so I'm fine with text and an emoji here and there. But yeah, that's pretty much it. But again, I think that will evolve over time, ultimately. In terms of audio and video, that's something that is planned as well, but not implemented right now.
All right. And can you give us any kind of time frame for when this might be available, both the app functionality and being able to deliver different providers,
I think
either clicks or snaps?
So the app functionality is there today, actually. So you
On the phone?
You could start integrating with that. So if you're happy to switch your phone to dev mode, you could actually put a provider in there today with a bit of help from our side. However, for delivering that via official ways, via store, that's a bit out. And I cannot commit to any time on there.
Okay. And for people who do want to switch to dev mode and work with you on this, where's a good place for them to go to work with you?
Well, usually hash Ubuntu touch on IRC, so Freenode, obviously. Just reach out either to me or to Bill Filler, so B Filler on IRC. And we can help directly or we can dispatch you to the right people.
Okay. All right. Well, if anyone has any other questions on the messaging framework, go ahead and get them in. We're going to go back and start at the top of the list of questions, and we'll get through all of them that we can, and then any new ones that come in. So the first one is from Chloe Wolfie Girl. She's asking, how are we doing, and how has our weekend been? So my weekend was spent doing a lot of physical work in the yard and cleaning out gutters on my house. So loads of fun. But I've got a tropical storm heading my way later this week, so I needed to get all that done. Not expecting a lot of wind, but probably quite a bit of rain. How about you, Daniel?
Yeah, I came back from holidays and afterwards visited my parents. It was nice to see them again. Came back and like crazy amounts of emails were waiting for me. I'm still somewhat snowed in, but I'm getting there. How about you, Thomas?
Yeah, I also spent quite some time in the yard and tidying it up. So we recently removed some large trees, and now the yard looks like, wow, that needs some love. Other than that, yeah, spent time with the family. So we got two small kids, and usually our weekends look like entertaining them, dawn to evening. But yeah, usual stuff. At least it's quite sunny here, so the place I live in. So yeah, we had 2 barbecues over the weekend. That was good.
Nice.
Yep.
T. Simon Q2 is asking, where is Popey? So Alan had a nice 3-day weekend and decided that that wasn't long enough for him. So he's pretending to be sick today so that he can take another day off.
As usual.
All right, Chloe is asking about the HUD in Unity 8. And Thomas, I'm not sure if this is something that you've been involved in at all. Do you know what the status is on that?
No. Not at all. And I haven't looked into that for a long time, I have to admit.
Okay.
But if you really want to know if there are plans and when they are going to happen, just hit Savik on Ubuntu Touch. He will love me for dispatching to him now.
Or go directly to the top and ask Mark.
And Mark will love you for that too.
I know. You can ask him about the Windicators as well. I think the next question is for myself. It's about the Snappy Playpen. Yeah, I was on holidays, and it looks like nobody picked up the work to look at the Playpen, but we're going to go back to regular events, more code reviews, better stuff. It's going to be awesome. And what's really nice is that Snapd recently got quite a few new interfaces, which should block a bunch of apps. So I'm looking forward to working together with you. But more on that next week when I'm, mostly done with email.
Yeah, I've got a couple of branches for that, so I'll trade you some reviews for mine for some others.
That's good.
Speaking of which, we've got the new, you mentioned some new interfaces. So the one I'm going to submit has the new content interface, which lets you share files, either data files or even like executables or libraries, between multiple snaps. So I've got an example of that I'm going to put in the playpen, and I'm working on a blog post for that too that should be out later this week.
Yeah, there's so much good Snap stuff. We should do a Q&A session or a general session on Snappy. There's just so much good stuff happening right now.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
Maybe we could have Zygmunt on next week.
Yeah.
All right. The next one was Chloe asking about the messaging framework, which we've already covered. Simon's asking what shirt you're wearing, Daniel.
That's easy enough to answer. I hope that was long enough.
I like that shirt. You've worn that on another Q&A before.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
All right. Chloe's asking if we play the Snappy Crocodile song when we package a snap. And I am not familiar with this song. Does anybody know what song she's talking about?
I'm going to get the YouTube link. I'll give it to you.
Oh, Daniel, we could actually sing it a little.
You already have kids, so I'm sure you're more familiar with the lyrics. I'll give you.
Das kleine Krokodil.
I've never heard this one before.
Yeah.
Really? Schnappi?
Yeah.
No, I think that was part of the first Snappy presentations. Like, I know that ASAC played it a couple of times, so I'll have the link ready for you in a minute.
Oh, I missed the early Snappy stuff. I was too involved in Click and Phone. I missed all that fun stuff. All right, Chloe's asking if there's any updates on the new notifications or the new Dash and Scopes designs. I think both of which were talked about at the last Ubuntu Online Summit. So Thomas, going to come back to you. Do you know what's going on with any of those?
To a certain degree, I guess work in progress is the right way of putting it, but I cannot provide any more details on that.
Who's a good person for us to have on to talk about that? Would that be Savik?
Anything Unity 8 is either Kevin Gunn or obviously Savik. So we can call him in. Let's see if he's online.
All right. If not, we can get him on another week. Maybe give him a little bit more, a little more warning before we put him on air.
He's usually fine with such things. So I just gave him a ping. Let's keep on going, and if he wants to join,
Okay.
answer that question.
D. Shimmer is asking, what are some good places I could ask quick questions of current users as I begin to explore Ubuntu Touch on a Nexus 4? So the hash Ubuntu-Touch channel on IRC, which Thomas already mentioned, is a great place for that. You've got both developers and users hanging out there, so you can usually get some really good answers on that. Mostly during weekdays and working hours on weekdays. It gets a little bit quiet over the weekend. There's also askubuntu.com where you can go and ask any questions on anything. We've got an Ubuntu Touch tag for questions specific to that, and people monitor that tag and try and answer those pretty quickly. And then, of course, we've also got the mailing list, the Ubuntu Phone mailing list. There's Facebook and Google Plus groups for app developers, and a Telegram group also, I think. So there's lots of places. I would recommend going to IRC first and then probably Ask Ubuntu second. All right, Chloe says, I see a lot of books behind you. Thomas, what's your favorite fiction and non-fiction books?
Let me answer the non-fiction book question first. It's called the Hyperion Cantos. And let me paste a link on IRC. That's just some sci-fi stuff. I usually enjoy reading that, and that's my all-time favorite. For non-fiction, that's actually difficult. So a lot of books. For one of the books I enjoy reading and rereading is Communicating Sequential Processes by Horar, which is so if you're doing Go programming, a lot of the fundamentals and ideas behind Go stem from Communicating Sequential Processes. It's surprisingly old, and if you like mathematical stuff and logic and proofs, it's a book for you. Other than that, let me take a look. I've got a lot of books on machine learning. One of the best books out of that is probably Neural Networks for Pattern Recognition by Christopher Bishop. That's the one I keep on rereading, and I have been reading it for, I think, the last 10 years. What else? One other. I see a book on ordinary differential equations. I'm not sure I ever read that. So that's certainly not in my top 3 list.
Makes you look smart. We have visitors, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and then I actually got a book in German on image processing. It's fairly old, but still the principles presented in there apply to this day. So, for example, the Facebook 360-degree imaging stuff that they recently open sourced, they're using optical flow to calculate rays when they take the raw data and stitch it together, and that's stuff that is presented in that book, and I enjoy reading that.
I found that old programming books are really good for things like that gets glossed over in more modern stuff. Like a lot of them are like, here's this image library, use it, and they don't talk about what is actually implemented in that library and how it works.
Well, yeah, I've got a theoretical background in computer science, and I usually like understanding things top to bottom. So it's fine to use a library, obviously, but it helps tremendously to at least have a good understanding of how things fit together. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be able to prove everything and understand it to the last detail, but a rough notion of the things that power all of those advanced systems, that's super helpful.
All right. Simon's got a question for you also. What is the programming language you find yourself using the most often?
Well, I guess, so for me, it's still C++ with a lot of Go. So whatever is more appropriate for the specific problem. Those are the 2 programming languages.
Which do you enjoy using the most? And it doesn't have to be of those 2, just programming language in general. Which do you find the most fun?
Fun.
Visual Basic.
What's that?
Visual Basic.
Yeah. No, well, I really I like C and C++ actually. Yeah, that's perfectly fine. For anything that involves communication and orchestrating really multiple components that communicate with one another, I really enjoy doing Go. It's like awesome. It's just great. You can get done so much more with less code when compared to other languages. Yeah, that's quite nice. But yeah, those are the two top ones. Obviously, whenever it's required, I do Python. Bash, if you want to call that a programming language. Um, um, but yeah, I used to do C# and Java. Both are fine to get the job done as well. But yeah, C++ and Go these days.
All right. Akra Nuck asks, how large a range of Qt and especially KDE apps do you intend to deliver with snaps, and any in particular to focus on? So I've been working with several people from the Ubuntu project and from the KDE Neon project to work on snapping those applications. So the goal right now is to snap all of the ones that are currently part of KDE Neon. They've got a smaller selection of apps that they're packaging already in a PPA, and we're working on getting those all packaged as snaps. I think they all are snaps right now, but they're not very optimal snaps. They're pretty big. Things like the new content framework that's just been introduced is going to help with that. So I'm going to continue working with them. So there's about a dozen, I think, applications right now from KDE specifically.
And in general, we just want to make it as easy as possible to ship as much software as snaps as possible. So, and also with the concept of channels in the store, it's going to be really nice if people can auto submit stuff to the store that passes their QA. So basically, we want all the stuff in the store.
We've got Snapcraft now has a plugin for QMake, so if you're using that for your Qt app, it can just build that really easily. We also have desktop launchers for Qt 4 and Qt 5 that include all of the packages that you need to run a basic Qt app. So you still have to add anything that's specific to yours, but it should include all the Qt core libraries and everything. That makes it a lot easier to package Qt apps as snaps.
I'm going to be at Academy next week, so I'm going to talk to a couple of Qt and KDE folks there.
Okay, Richard Boo is asking, says, I appreciate you can't ruin manufacturers' product launches and name specific devices, but are you able to give enough away to say more mobile handsets to buy in 2016 without naming names? No, we cannot say anything about that. We get asked, I think, every week about upcoming devices, and the answer is always the same. We can't say anything about them or make announcements about them. That's up to the manufacturer to do. So you'll all just have to wait and see.
And same goes for the next question about devices in the US. So moving on. We talked about the messaging platforms.
Yeah. So Chloe's asking me if I have a million yet to start my own hardware company. I do not. I've got another $100 set aside for that, so I'm well on my way. Sometime in the next 1,000 years, I ought to have enough saved up. The next one's also for me. How is progress on uReddit? So uReddit is my Reddit client written in the Ubuntu UI toolkit and SDK. And I haven't actually worked on that in months now. For those who don't know, I'm working on an Android app now, and that's taking up all of my free time in the evenings and on weekends. So no updates on uReddit. Sorry, guys. All right. Chloe asks, HUD on Unity 7 looks through trees of menus and is based only on text. Is the HUD in Unity 8 going to be the same, or will it have some more integration with the app? So the original implementation, when the phone was just starting out, it was using Qt Actions, which is a set of APIs from Qt that we extended a little bit. So it's not quite like menu trees. It's a little bit more flexible than that. But I think the plan was also to use menus as well, which may be action-based in Qt already anyway. But since we don't really have any firm timeline or plans for how Unity 8 is going to handle the HUD, we really don't know at this point. I keep asking Ted every time I see him about the HUD 2.0 mock-ups that we saw years ago that had all kinds of functionality integration. But yeah, not going to see that anytime soon, I'm afraid.
This next question is for me. It's about having a Snapcraft GUI application. I saw that there was a proposal for it somewhere, but I'm still not quite sure what it would do. I could imagine that you would have some sort of text editor and a run Snapcraft button or something, or I don't know, upload Snap to device or something else.
Yeah, I think somebody wrote one that just calls out to Snapcraft. And I think they've actually packaged that up as a Snap, and it might be in the store now. Probably it has to run unconfined to be able to do everything that Snapcraft does.
I guess so. I mean, it would be nice, like, for example, if you would record, like, these are files in the resulting snap. Do you want to, you know, exclude some and have a like a handy picker for doing that kind of thing, and would generate the snapcraft.yaml for you? But
yeah, generating file sets would be a nice use for that.
I could imagine that the resulting YAML would be crazy huge. I'm not sure. Like, it would be good to discuss the features or figure out what's currently too hard when you're just using Snapcraft on your own, and then figure out is this something that should be fixed in Snapcraft where it would auto-guess based on whatever you're doing, or I don't know. It sounds to me like need more discussion.
Yeah.
Or how do you guys feel about it?
I feel like some editor plugins would be great. So I don't think the problem is editing the problem is editing the YAML. It's the problem of you got to know all the keys and or possible values and whatnot. So just some Emacs minor mode or some Sublime plugins or whatever people are using, what is used the most. I think that would be totally helpful. I find myself browsing through snapcraft.io routinely, and it's not exactly discoverable and searchable at this point. So I've got a bunch of bookmarks, and I really don't like maintaining bookmarks. So some editor plugins, I think that would be super helpful. I don't feel like a UI is the right tool, but yeah, just make it a first-class citizen or an atom. That would be epic as well.
Yeah. Yeah, let's discuss this on the Snapcraft list, because I can imagine that there's loads of opinions and crazy ideas, and maybe some of them are easy to pull off. So let's.
Yeah. Even just improving like the command line help that you get for different plugins would help with that a lot. So you can list like all the different options that a plugin takes and what kind of parameters it takes and what they do.
Yeah.
Brilliant idea.
All right, Nightmare asks, how hard is it to commit to the 6-week release cycle for the phone? So that's something that probably somebody not on this Hangout today would be able to answer. We're not really responsible for making those deadlines, so I don't think we can comment very well on it, other than the fact that it's not hard for us because we're not involved.
Do we know some anecdotes, like how hard it was, like based on the QA cycle or something?
Well, it's usually, so if you come to think about it, I'm probably more involved than I want to be to a certain degree. So for a six-week release cadence, you've got roughly 3 weeks to get things in, right? Given that you need a roughly 3-week QA cycle, just for the multitude of devices we're considering and stuff like that, and then it's a bit of back and forth. And that's actually challenging in terms of feature development. It's somewhat okay for bug fixing for bug fixes that are obvious with limited scope. So yeah, that's one thing. So from my experience, when I did all of the biometry stuff, and specifically the fingerprint reader on the Pro 5, that was really like, okay, I can almost not predict for which OTA I will land. And it was a long time in the making until finally it appeared. Did it already appear? I don't know, but that's really the challenge. You got to break up the work, or make sure that your pre-roll phase is long enough for a specific feature.
Yeah, I've noticed that for some big things where you really can't break it up into smaller commits, that they tend to grow in the CI train silos until they're so big that they almost take an entire cycle just to land and stabilize those, and so that kind of blocks other things from coming in.
Yeah, you know, I think there could be ways to make that a little easier. But then reality is for a lot of the features we are adding, and I'm again taking biometry as an example, those things touch on a lot of aspects of the underlying platform, and they block a lot of other things for a very good reason, because they integrate with them, and that's partly the challenge there. Sometimes you can break up those dependencies. Sometimes that would be even more work than just staging everything in a silo.
All right. D. Shimmer is asking, when will the Ubuntu, and will it wait until snaps are ready for the phone? So there is work right now on building images based on 1604. And there's also work going into migrating all of the phone stuff over to snaps. Probably they're both going to be done in sync, because there's a lot of work in both of them, and it really doesn't make sense to do a lot of work just to get halfway there. So I would expect that it's going to be all of it happening at once together. And a lot of that is because snaps do require things in 1604, so we can't exactly land snaps early very easily.
Yeah.
All right. Chloe asks, we've been told about the messaging framework and seen the music app working with Spotify. What other integrations in core apps are expected? So we have a sync framework now based on Buteo, which syncs contacts right now, I believe, and we're working on calendar, or the other way around. I don't remember which. But that framework, in theory, can allow things like file syncing also. It's just a matter of figuring out how that works with our confinement and app lifecycle story. And then, Thomas, I think you had a couple other frameworks, right?
Let me correct you a little bit there. It's not necessarily about the app lifecycle story, because the moment people would integrate with the framework, again, the incentive is we give you an exception to a certain degree, so we will give you some time slices in the background. It's really about confinement, because general file backup or syncing in a confined world is like difficult to do. So first from a user perspective, but even from an app developer's perspective. Imagine you're a game and you've got expensive assets in your in your part of the file system, in your specific silo. You don't necessarily want everyone to access that, right? But go ahead, please.
Okay. And there were some other frameworks I think that you had talked about, like a location one to let apps track location when they're not necessarily running.
Can you?
We talked about something for like an activity tracker, and I think you had mentioned at least plans for a framework around it.
Yeah. So It's not a framework. It's actually an extension of the location infrastructure in the sense that when you want to track position in the background, there are two aspects to that. First of all, keep some part of the app running, or wake it up occasionally to report significant changes. And then the other aspect is keeping the device alive, right? Or at least just turn the screen off and keep the device running. Those two aspects are related, but solved differently. So what we are aiming for is an application can say, can tell the location service, hey, please start updates, and by the way, I want to monitor. And what that means is that we try to keep the monitoring application alive for as long as possible, for a simple reason. If you've got a mapping application or something like turn-by-turn navigation, you want that thing to be alive. You want to have zero latency on audio output, or almost zero latency on audio output. You want your display to refresh smoothly and whatnot. And then the other aspect that we'll do, or what that will do, is we'll take the equivalent of a wake lock on the system. So basically making sure that they're not going to deep sleep automatically. So on Ubuntu phone, as opposed to the desktop, we've got this model of opportunistic suspend. So the baseline state of the system is suspended, and you got to work hard to get it out of there, right? And it tries to get back to suspend as much as possible, as hard as possible. And if you want to prevent that, you have to take a wake lock on the system, and first of all expose your own identity, so who took the wake lock and what kind of wake lock, and usually we will distinguish the ones keeping only device on, so CPU and stuff going, and the ones keeping the display alive as well. Right, and I think there's even a merge proposal up. I don't know when that will land in the official images.
All right. Chloe again is asking, you used to have an app called Friends, which integrated multiple social accounts such as Facebook and Twitter. Are there plans to resurrect this idea at any time? So I don't know specifically why Friends ended, but I do know we perpetually had a problem with API access limitations. So once a bunch of people started using Friends, we quickly ran up against like the Facebook API limit, and then it broke for everybody. So without having a workaround for that, when it became popular enough that people started using it, it also became unusable. And I don't think we ever found a way around. All right, next question. When not doing Linuxy related things, what are your hobbies? Thomas, we'll start with you.
Well, yeah, I obviously got a family, and that's taking most of the time that I'm not spending at work. Yeah, friends and family. Whenever I find a bit of time for myself, I try to go for a run, but that happens very infrequently these days. And if I'm lucky and I get a day to my own, I actually like hacking. So right now I'm looking into Magenta and Fuchsia, so Google's new OS. I'm quite interested in operating system design. And yeah, that just keeps me entertained.
How about you, Daniel?
Yeah, I would also say friends and family first. Like right after this Q&A, I'm going to go babysit my niece. True story. Apart from that, music. So like going to parties and festivals and I'm not DJing as much as I used to. All kinds of stuff. Reading, yoga, meeting friends.
Nice.
Not sure why Marteti is mentioned here, but looks like Thomas. How about you, Mike?
I enjoy cooking quite a bit. That's the one thing I really like to do that's not computer related in any way. Like Thomas, I like packing. My free time is usually spent doing something similar to what I do for my day job, just on different projects. But I like to cook. I like to barbecue and to grill. It's very therapeutic to me.
So, Michael, here's an invitation. If you're in Germany in November, feel free to use or abuse my kitchen. I'm always happy for a warm meal.
Well, it just so happens that I may be in Essen in the later part of November, so we might have an opportunity to take you up on this.
See.
Okay.
I think we just confirmed the team dinner. And I think I know.
Yeah, just
all right,
what you wish for. You might have.
I'll send you a grocery list.
Yeah, exactly. 30, 40 people showing up in your kitchen.
That's
right,
fine. My wife is used to that, I guess.
All right, we've got like 2 minutes left, so Simon's asking if we're attending John O'Bacon's Reddit AMA, which starts in 2 minutes. I'm not sure what subreddit he's on, but everybody go harass John O on Reddit for us. Simon is again asking about David Calais becoming an Ubuntu member, and the answer is still the same. You should ask him and not us.
+1. Keep asking him.
Chloe asks, when I become rich and make my own phone hardware, will I be willing to let you guys announce it on the Q&A? No, that's going to be just for me. They will not be allowed to announce anything on the Q&A. If Popey was a tree, what type of tree would he be? Today he would be a sick tree. Let's see. Dishimmer, is there a link to any doc site that comes close to being a current user guide for how to work with Ubuntu Touch? As a user, I don't think so. As a developer, developer.ubuntu.com has all the information you need there. All right, if you were a book, what type of book would you be? We're going to skip that one. Are there any plans to provide KDE Connect-like functionality between the phone, tablet, and the desktop? I haven't heard of anything. Thomas, have you?
Let me see.
So KDE Connect.
Oh yeah, I know.
Devices to desktops. I don't know how hard it would be to make an Ubuntu phone part of that.
There have been a lot of conversations around that sort of functionality. It never left the stage of would be cool. So the obvious approach is like, yeah, that's great, let's do it, and then you come to think about all the corner cases, and then it's like, we probably postpone that. So yeah, I guess that's the short answer. Not right now.
All right, and last question is from Popey. He says, would you prefer people bring proper questions next week rather than tree, book, or food-related ones? And I'm not going to be on next week, so Popey will be on, so I would say no, bring all the irrelevant questions you can think of and ask them all to Alan. And with that, we are out of time. Thank you, Thomas, for coming on. It's been great to have you. We finally got some of these questions answered that keep getting asked every week.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It was
Thank you, everybody on IRC, for all of your great questions. And again, we will be back next week at 15 UTC, same place, ubuntuonair.com, and #UbuntuOnAir on Freenode IRC. You can follow us on Twitter at UbuntuOnAir. We're also on YouTube, where you can watch this video and any previously recorded videos on Ubuntu On Air. On our YouTube channel, it is also Ubuntu On Air. All right, take care, everybody. We will see you next week.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Goodbye.